Hello guys, and welcome back to another video. Today I will be painting the armour of a blade guard using the official Eavy Metal Black Templar recipes. This is hopefully to show you how you can achieve similar results to the box art. First of all, I prime the model using Chaos Black Primer. When I apply a primer, I usually only just dust the miniature fairly lightly. This is to ensure no details are clogged and that I get a smooth surface. Next, I base coat the whole miniature by brush, using several thin layers of Chaos Black. Feel free to use whichever black you prefer to do this. I recommend AK 3rd generation black as a good alternative. Brushing the black on by hand like this means that we now have a surface that we can paint over any mistakes without struggling to match the finish of the spray can. As you can see, next I start to apply the first chunky highlight with a mix of 2 parts Stegadon Scale Green to 1 part black. So here we are aiming for quite a thick highlight that we can comfortably get our successive highlight stages within. This method of highlighting helps to create a smooth transition towards the edge of the armour. Now, because we base coated this black by hand, it's very easy to just go around and tidy up any mistakes to this first stage highlight. You can really take your time here and try to get this first stage as uniform as you can. Next, I continue to highlight the backpack and arms using this first stage chunky highlight. Now that the first stage on the black is done, I'm just going to get a solid base coat over these shoulder pads with Ulthuan Grey. The white recipe that I'm going to use in this video is very slightly different to the Eavy Metal method. If you want that recipe, I will include that in the information below. So now that I've got a solid base coat of Ulthuan, I'm just going to shade it with a mix of Dawnstone and Baneblade Brown. You can mix this in with the Ulthuan to create a smoother transition. Next, I'm just going to run an edge highlight around the top of this armor panel. For this, I like to use AK 3rd Gen white, but you can use any white that you prefer. Now with the white shoulder panels out of the way, I continue with the first highlight on the helmet. Next is the second stage highlight with pure Stegadon. I'm aiming to get this within the previous highlight stage. So as you can see here, I've continued to highlight around all parts of the armour with Stegadon. At the same time, I'm starting to add some chips and weathering towards the bottom of the legs. I continue to add this chipping to areas I consider more prone to damage. Even at this stage, it's important to keep this chipping quite fine, as this helps to add scale to the miniature. Next, I decide to add some soft specular highlights with the Stegadon and black mix. I find this just helps to add some shape and volume to these areas. At the moment I'm just working with the first two stages, however I will push this brighter later on. So for this next stage highlight, I'm going to use a mix of Stegadon and Wraithbone. With this highlight stage, it's important to keep it as fine and as sharp as you possibly can. Now, as you can see here, I've started to highlight the top of these vents with the Stegadon and Wraithbone stage. Around this orb highlight, I start to glaze Stegadon just to smooth out this transition. Now, I continue to glaze around these orbs with the Stegadon and black mix. Now, you can continue to glaze back and forth here if you want a very smooth transition. It all just depends on the amount of time that you want to spend. So this is the backpack now, completed up to the third stage. So with most of the armour out of the way now, we only have the 3rd stage highlights left to do on the helmet. Once that's done, we're going to move on and do Celestra as the final highlight stage. So you might have noticed up till now that the armour's looking quite blue. This final highlight stage of Celestra really helps to desaturate and knock some of that blue out of the armour. So with this stage, we're mostly concentrating towards the top edges of things that are going to reflect the most amount of light. When applying these final highlight stages, I like to get a nice sharp highlight by using the side of the brush. Just make sure when you do this to use the side of the tip of the brush and not the base, as you'll have much more control this way. Now with the body out of the way, I continue with the Celestra stage around the edges of the backpack. Some of these areas on the backpack do get quite fine, so you have to be quite careful here. And really take your time around this top vent. Now with most of these final edge highlights out of the way, I continue to brighten up the orb highlights that I placed earlier on the top of these vents. Now all that's left to do is just to add some final white dot highlights around the corners of armor panels. I find this really helps to finish off the armor and makes it look great. So that's it for this video. In part 2 I will cover how to paint the cream tabard, including the freehand design. I'd like to take a moment to say a massive thank you to everyone who has subscribed via the Patreon. This really helps support me to make more content like this in the future. I will be adding some more Patreon content very soon, including longer, less edited tutorials and some early access videos for this miniature, like the leather, shield and metallics, as well as some tips on applying transfers and basing. Thank you for watching. If you would like to buy this miniature, I'll be putting an eBay link in the description. The auction will end in a week's time and any proceeds go into further improvements to the channel.